Welcome aboard, everyone, to this week's Nautical Me Thursday Briefing Live. Today, we're steering into a wonderful Cape Cod flavored mix, a newly acquired sea book, one beautiful island in our countdown, pirate treasure off Wellfleet, some excellent book recommendations, and a practical at the helm challenge from Pintle and Gudgeon. And because we always like to begin with a useful sea term, today's opening nautical term is lee shore. Lee is spelled Lee. A lee shore is a shore that the wind is pushing you towards. In other words, it is the shore you do not want to be blown onto. It's one of those old sailing terms that still matters because it reminds us that danger at sea is often about the combination of wind, drift, and lack of room to recover. And later in this presentation, we'll get into the pirate ship, the Whydah Galley, which goes down on a lee shore in April 26, 1717, not too far from where I live. Okay, let's get into our first segment. I'm covering a new book, Desperate Voyage. I've just picked up a secondhand copy of Desperate Voyage, and that is exactly the sort of book I love to bring into this briefing. The author is John Caldwell, and his story is extraordinary. In 1946, Caldwell set off from Panama in a tiny 20-foot boat, largely self-taught, trying to get to Sydney to reunite with his wife in Australia. That alone is enough to stop you in your tracks. He was not launching from comfort. He was launching from need, determination, and raw nerve. Later in life, Caldwell became well known in the Caribbean, and he died in 1998 on Palm Island in the Grenadines at age 80. What draws me to this book is not just the seamanship, it's the scale of resolve. Sometimes the best sea books are not polished tales of mastery, they're stories of stubbornness, improvisation, and survival. That's what makes Desperate Voyage feel alive. And now, from one sailor's sheer determination to one of the Caribbean's great little names, we're going to move into segment 2. And coming in at number 22 on our island countdown is Joost van Dyke. Joost van Dyke is one of the British Virgin Islands just west of Tortola. It's one of the smallest of the main BVI islands, and it's rugged, elevated, and famously full of charm. Britannica notes that the island rises to about 1,054 feet, and BVI Tourism points out that the island is named for a Dutch privateer, and the island punches well above its size and character. What I love about Joost van Dyke is that it feels like the kind of island sailors remember with a smile. It's not just geography, it's mood. It's the sort of place that seems to say, come ashore, loosen your shoulders, and remember why people fall in love with islands in the first place. So if you've never been, add Joost van Dyke to your dream list. And if you have been, you already know why it belongs in a countdown like this. Now for our primary segment, number 3. Let's bring it home to Cape Cod. One reason this week feels so especially Cape Cod to me is the old irresistible pull of the Whydah The Whydah galley sank off of Wellfleet in April 26, 1717. And Barry Clifford discovered the wreck in 1984. The wreck remains famous as the world's only fully authenticated pirate shipwreck of the golden age of piracy. And selected artifacts are displayed today at the Whydah Pirate Museum in West Yarmouth. And I'll confess it plainly, after the recent storms on Cape Cod, I've had that old beachcomber's fantasy of finding a stray piece of eight washed out of the sand somewhere on the outer cape. Now, whether one finds pirate silver or just cold toes and seaweed, that longing says something important about Cape Cod. The place is layered with wrecks, rumor, surf, and even when you find nothing at all, the coast gives you the feeling that history is still just offshore, shifting under the sand. And if you want to step into that story in a bit more grounded way, this is a very good moment to mention Barry Clifford and the Whydah Pirate Museum in West Yarmouth. So if you're on Cape Cod or heading here, it's one of those places that connects the romance, the archaeology, and the reality of the Whydah story. And again, the ship name Whydah is often called Whydah and even Ouida, after the French pronunciation of the territory in Africa where the slave trade took place. So there's a lot of different pronunciations, and I flip flop between several of them. So now for a follow on segment for segment 4. And if you want to build a proper Cape Cod pirate and wreck shelf, here are the several books worth knowing. First, The Pirate Prince by Barry Clifford and Peter Turchi, a first-person treasure hunt account tied directly to the Whydah story. I love it. Second, Treasure Wreck, The Fortune and Fate of the Pirate Ship Whydah. It's by Arthur T. Vanderbilt II, a strong historical companion to the wreck story itself. Again, that book was Treasure Wreck, The Fortunes and Fate of the Pirate Ship Whydah. And that first book, again, The Pirate Prince by Barry Clifford with Peter Turchi. The third book is The Narrow Land, Folk Chronicles of Old Cape Cod by Elizabeth Reynard. Again, The Narrow Land, Folk Chronicles of Old Cape Cod by Elizabeth Reynard. It's not pirate treasure exactly, but pure Cape Cod atmosphere and folklore, originally tied to the 1930s and later editions. And fourth, Mooncussers of Cape Cod. Again, the title is Mooncussers of Cape Cod by Henry Crocker Kittredge, first published in 1937. It's one of those titles that instantly tells you you're in old Cape Cod territory. Those titles together make a very fine little Cape Cod Storm Night reading stack. And now let's downshift and go to segment 5 for our Pintle and Gudgeon at the Helm challenge. This week's challenge is built around a deceptively common small craft danger: losing control of a kayak or a paddleboard and being pulled farther offshore than expected. Here's the scenario. You're on a paddleboard or kayak. The breeze has freshened. The current is stronger than you realized. You fall off, or the craft slips out of reach. And suddenly you can feel that the water is taking you where you did not mean to go. So, what's the challenge question? What do you do first, and what do you absolutely not do? Here's the lesson I'd want our crew to remember. First, stay calm enough to think. Second, keep yourself with the craft if at all possible. The craft is flotation, visibility, and your best friend. Third, call for help early rather than late. And fourth, never underestimate wind plus current plus fatigue. In real life, these incidents are not dramatic movie scenes at first. They start as little mistakes. A board drifts, a paddle gets away, the shoreline stops getting closer. But the point of the challenge is to train judgment before panic arrives. So, in the comments or in our live chat, I'd ask the crew, what is your first move? What is your signal plan? And what mistake do beginners make most often in this situation? Now, segment 6, a short teaser for next week. Next week, I want to pick up on the more hard edge side of our nautical world. We'll get into the remarkable Cold War story associated with HMS Conqueror and the covert seizure of a Soviet towed sonar array, often retold as Operation Barmaid. And then we're going to contrast that story with another one about the grave damage done by the John Walker spy case, which the FBI describes as one of the most serious US Navy espionage cases of the Cold War. Walker's spying began in 1967 and gave the Soviets access to material that let them read encrypted naval messages, broader naval tactics, readiness, and sensor related knowledge were affected as well. And if we can fit it in, we'll add the story of a World War II submarine off the Massachusetts coast to keep the local waters in the frame. Now for our closing nautical term. That is set and drift. Set, S-E-T, and drift, D-R-I-F-T. Your set is the direction the current is carrying you. Your drift is the speed. It's a simple phrase, but it carries a big lesson. At sea, you're not only where you think you are, you're also where the water is quietly taking you. So again, set and drift. And set and drift are true in navigation and, quite frankly, true in life. So until next time, keep a weather eye open, keep your wits about you, and if you're walking a Cape Cod beach after a storm, well, perhaps keep one eye out for a piece of 8. I thank you for joining us. This is Phil Wilson. I'll see you on the inside.